people didn't get it just out of thin air. They didn't make it. They didn't, you know, like people,
right.
you know, people weren't in the hood just with their school chemistry sets talking about like, oh, look what I invented. No,
Right.
no.
Have I
And,
got something for you?
right. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Hey everybody, my name is Lillian,
and I'm Eddie.
and this is
Track in Progress.
a podcast where two Boricua siblings on opposite coasts unpack culture and creativity while learning about themselves through each other. Today, we're going to be talking about two topics that we brought up. But first, Eddie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a good week. So I wanted to ask you, like, what is something that you've accomplished this week that you feel proud of, or just anything in general?
Oh, okay. I started PT this week, so I have an injury from my shoulder. So I started PT, and I don't know, I'm proud of showing up both times because the pain on the second day, I almost quit. Also, I got to see my godson, my nephew. He came back from school, so he's in college right now. So he came back home, so I got to see him. We took him out. I teased him about as much as you're supposed to tease a kid before they're about to go back to college. And and I'm here, and I made it, and we're here.
Absolutely.
So that I'm really proud of it.
I think for me, related to you were talking about PT, physical therapy, which reminded me of, when I was in the military. PT meant something different than physical training. So that's something that I'm proud of myself. I've been consistent with adding exercise in my routine.
Nice.
And anybody that has tried it, especially beginning of the year, knows how hard it could be. So, I had already started running more often, but I started adding two exercises. One, push-ups daily. So I'm 10 push-ups daily. Um, you know, it might increase, but for right now, that's what I'm committing to. A
Hold on,
small
what we got over
achievable goal.
here? What we got? Let's go. Yeah, that looks about. You know what? You could do 11.
Yeah. Yeah. So the push-ups and then planks. I know planks sounds random, but I'm trying to make do with the space that I have. And so, when I go down to do push-ups, I realize if I have space for push-ups, I have space for planks. It's working out two separate muscle groups. So that's that. The other thing I'm proud about is just my other social media content. I've been consistent with recording videos, getting out of my comfort zone, and
Yeah,
that sort
man.
of thing.
I love to see. I love when your videos pop on. As you had told me a while back, a lot of your content before was just you're talking about the music, right? And they maybe your face is not there, so your recent like broadcasting your image is pretty new for you, but I'm liking it. Always got a new bucket hat on, so I'm for it.
Yeah. I mean, you just got to realize like you're gonna be your own biggest critic. So the things that you see in yourself that just bug you, like someone else ain't even paying attention to that. So you just got to do it.
That's a fact. And if you are, you too close.
Exactly.
Oh man. All right. So that's what's up. Actually, so today we're gonna do two topics. One is brought by me and one is brought by you. And we're gonna jump into the first topic. This topic is creativity and navigating multiple interests and creative bursts that bring you to tackling on new projects. So to start off, can you tell me a little bit about what kind of creative interests you've had in the past, or are interested in? Just generally speaking, what are the kind of things you're into?
Yeah, creative interests. More recently, I had I'm not sure if you're familiar with vibe coding. Um, so vibe coding is basically a way to create things using AI, whereas you would typically need to know coding language and you
Mm.
know pumping out commands and codes to make things happen. And with AI you could kind of just prompt AI and knows the coding language, so we'll start building stuff for you. So one of the things that I did recently was a record store guide. um, you know, and it's not it's not fully completed. I did get pretty far. There's some components that I would need, certain add-ins and plugins that.
So when you say
Yeah.
record store guide, right? Is that what you said?
Yes.
So this is like if I was going to a complicated supermarket, there would be an app that would be like, okay, here's the aisle and the produce aisle, and like this
Not
is where you
quite.
find this.
Not quite, right? I guess I call it a guide. It'll be more like a directory. So I created like for Los Angeles. So
Oh,
not every record store, but pretty much most of the ones, most of them that I've been to, and some I haven't, and just focusing on what they specialize in, what's the differences, maybe get some ratings from online, what the vibe is, and stuff
got
like that. So I started working on that because it was part of my interest with record collecting anyway. So I said, hey, why not work on this? It could turn into something. I wanted to add maybe like some maps, some
okay.
other events tab, and
Liking
stuff like
this.
that.
Yeah. I'm liking this. I'm liking this idea. I'm feeling like it's like Yelp meets like Google Maps type energy, where it's like it's kind of like your guide to finding the nearest record store, the record store that might have this style. Or okay, I feel
Yeah,
it. That's
exactly.
pretty cool. Yeah. I actually I had recently I kind of had one of my own recent creative bursts where like I kind of dove deep on a thing. Um, I think every year to 2 years, I have like this creative burst where I just become obsessed with an idea. Sometimes it's like a thing I want to make, or like an event I want to put on, or like a topic that I just need to know more about. Usually it's personal. Like the last time I did that, I went to school. It was like, and so this time around, it was, I think I'm gonna get really into engineering because I got injured recently, and I'm short. I'm 5'1" on my ID. Like, that's saying something. So I have to reach all the time. On top of that, my job working in a warehouse, I'm required to reach, like, that's how I do my job, is just reaching constantly. And there is a ladder, but there's a sacrifice that you have to make if you're using the ladder. Like, can I make my rate, or can I get the item, right? So you tend to reach a lot, even though you're not supposed to. Um, and then I come home, and literally anything I have to do, I have to reach everywhere I am. So I was just like, why is it that we don't have like storage that just comes down on command and then goes back up where it's supposed to go? And it's like, does it exist? Sure. I mean, like, we're in 2026. Like, these things exist. But I'm diving into this topic of like, why doesn't this exist? I'm like putting AI to the test, really. Okay.
Right.
This language learning model. I'm always testing it. And I'm just learning about, engineering, but then also like product design, and why certain things that feel so intuitive and obvious don't make it to market. And I am the last person that would ever be interested in sales. I hate having to tell people to buy something, but I mean, I could see myself going down the rabbit hole with this and possibly building the thing, but we'll see. But eventually, at some point, I'm probably going to send you a video of me using the thing I made for at least my house. It's probably going to become a towel rack.
No, I love it, and that's how things get invented, right? Out of a necessity, people that either from a frustration or from a need, and you just have this creative idea. And I think it's great that you don't tell yourself, well, I can't do it, I don't have the knowledge. Like, now there's all sorts of tools where if you think it, hey, you could pursue it. So I love it. I love to see it. Definitely don't put it out there,
I don't want to tell y'all all my. I don't want to give away the
don't put the
sauce.
don't put the recipe for the sauce out there, because
Okay.
a lot of times companies, they want to co-opt it, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to solve a few engineering problems, physics problems, safety problems, and just general marketing problems. So I think I have an idea why nobody's gonna steal it anyway. But yeah, I'll hold it tight to the chest.
No
But
doubt, no
yeah,
doubt.
and it's funny you say that, because I mean, obviously, music is something that you're very interested in, and so to me, it seems like a no-brainer that you would jump on this topic and kind of deep dive in and bring it to fruition to create something that's a guide to help others. Um, and I think it's funny because when people ask like what I'm interested in, like it really depends on what year it is. To be honest, like what age did you ask me that question? You might say she's a party planner. Oh, she's a psychologist. I'm not, but or oh, she's a singer. Like it really depends what part of my life, what era of my life you met me in.
That's facts.
Um,
That's facts. Yeah.
and I wonder if you feel the same way. Do you find that like you've bounced between a lot of different interests, or do you feel like it's been linear?
I think over the years, I have, I went from, my teenagers, I was doing martial arts.
Mm.
Um, and then there was at one point where me and Jasmine, my wife, we were doing music management. So I was actually involved with, finding artists, and we were doing events and that sort of thing. So music related. When I got really involved and focused into marathon and running, once I started getting closer to accomplishing my goals there, I actually had a running blog. I don't know if anyone knew that I had that, but I did have a running
I
blog.
did not know this at all.
Yeah, yeah. I was trying to be a running content creator. And I was doing a lot of things. I was being a pace group leader. So, it was a lot regarding running that I was focused on for a long time, because, until I was accomplishing my goal for that, I couldn't let that go.
Mhm.
And then, like more recently, um, you know, now I'm record collecting, but I did have my stretch with the music podcast that I was a part of. It wasn't my own, but just kind of talking about music, interviewing artists and stuff like that. I mean, I think there's a common thing with music, but just different facets of it as well.
Yeah, I see
Um,
that through line. Like I know like you've been doing IT for upwards of 17 years, and you're talking about, oh yeah, I'm doing this thing with AI and coding, and then you find the way music fits in. And I think that's so admirable, and it's something I'm low-key really jealous of, because I feel like I can connect the dots for my creative projects. It's not like they're completely like separate from each other, but
right.
there isn't really like a through line that's as obvious as that. And while that may seem like, oh, well, that's cool, there's still a way it connects. Like, that's fun, that's exciting, but it's also wildly frustrating and like exhausting, especially when I feel like I'm trying to figure out what it is that I should be doing in life. And it makes going about looking for a career and deciding what my next move is going to be, it makes it really difficult, because they say like, okay, well, if you want to have an idea of your future, look in your past. And I'm looking at my past and I'm like, uh this map has no labels, I don't
Yeah.
really know what I'm looking at here.
Yeah. So I have my notes here as well. When do you feel you're most creative and motivated to, start diving into, different creative topics or side projects or whatever the case is?
So I find my I find that I'm most creative when I have time to pause.
Mm.
And so I sent you a video. This video is called My Advice for Creatives, Take a Nap by Feel Seen Space. And we should have it somewhere. Editor, that's me. That's you. Whatever. We don't have an editor. Yeah, so I watched this video, and basically the idea was, when you are feeling stuck, maybe they call it writer's block, but it's creative block. When you're feeling stuck, a lot of times the best thing that you can do for your creativity is to just take a break. Like, take pause, do nothing, turn off the TV.
Right.
A lot of times, like, I find like I have my most creative ideas when I'm in the shower or when I'm taking a drive. It's almost always in the shower when I have no access to a notepad or my phone, which is the most frustrating experience, because an idea will pop in my mind, and next thing you know, I'm trying to like shower as fast as I can so I can get out the shower and write it down and not lose it.
Yeah. The funny thing is, you think that's bad. Like, my creative peak often is when I'm on a run. Typically, like on a bit of a longer run, because I get to a point where, if I'm on a longer run, I'm not exerting myself as much. I could go
It's that flow
faster.
state, right?
Yeah, it's like that flow state, right? Like, I'm really just kind of in a groove, and my mind gets cleared, right? Maybe a little bit of runner's high, and like, just ideas start popping up into my head,
Yeah.
and I'm like, wow, it's just it's weird, because if I tell someone, yeah, like, it brings like a state of relaxation, someone look at me like, you crazy, you running, you feel relaxed when you're running. Yes, yes. Um, Listen, but I've been running for years, since I enlisted in the military, right? It was part of our everyday. You know,
And
it
I think that's
it
important to bring up too, because part of what the person in this video was talking about is just when things are not taking up so much of your mental capacity.
mhm,
And I I understand that creativity, like, when I don't know how you experience it, but I've heard a lot of creatives talk about it, and this is how I experience it. I don't feel like I'm making something happen. I feel like I'm receiving something. And
yeah,
my whole purpose, my job, is just to get it out of my body, get it out of my brain, put it on paper, say it out loud. And then after it's there, then I have a decision to make, right? And if I'm overwhelmed, one, my brain is too occupied to receive any of that. My brain is too occupied to do that work of solving things in the background. And then on top of that, even if I have an idea and I write it down, I'm probably too overwhelmed to make the next decision. Oh, okay, well, now what's my next step, right? Oh, okay, who can I call to involve in this thing? When you're overwhelmed mentally, when you're overstimulated, it's really, really difficult to take these creative bursts from ideas to actual projects?
So once you have your creative idea, um, it could be, me running and getting home, or you, commuting, whether driving, taking the train, whatever. Once you arrive where you're going, or enter a different place where now you have different stimulus, either people you're meeting or you're going to work, it could be very easy for you to lose those ideas. So what do you do to transfer those ideas before you change that mental state, right? Because I could come home from a run, and my son is talking to me. Oh, can you do this with me, that with me? And if I don't take that extra time to jot down my ideas, record them, even if it's just some bullet points, I could lose them just that quickly.
Yeah, I think that was like the benefit of me going back to school and taking psychology and then also doing research projects, was just learning how important notes were. And I'm still like not great with them, but
Right.
I'm definitely better than what I used to do, which was taking none at all. But I want to use that opportunity to kind of segue to the second video, which I had sent you, which was the career strategy for people with too many interests, the
Hmm.
M-shaped future. Um, and so this was a video that I felt really described what we were talking about a little earlier, which is just having so many interests
Yeah.
and kind of one, sometimes being like paralyzed by choice, right? Not knowing which direction to go and wanting to do it all, but also how that translates to making career decisions, right? And what what strategy, if any, is there for someone who finds themselves in that impasse, who finds themselves being overtaken by these many different interests? And it's something that I've really, really struggled with a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and it's something that these days I really am trying to reshape and restructure the way I think about my bursts, my creative bursts, the way I pursue creative projects, and also the way I frame what it is when I'm finished and I want to move on to the next thing,
Right.
because that process can be almost a grieving process. There's a lot of shame involved in that process because there's a lot of social influence and rules and stigma around it. And so I wanted to touch on that video and shout it out. And I wanted to know, like, what was your experience with that? And if anything in the video spoke to you in particular.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely that the I shape versus the M shape. I definitely think that I'm probably of that era where the I shape was the thing. You just focus and poured everything into one thing.
Yeah.
Everything else was really looked as more of a distraction, right?
Right.
But the thing is that when you have ideas, when you have other interests, like that's part of you.
Mm-hmm.
You can try to subdue it, push it away, and you know to think of it as just solely a distraction. I think is really a missed opportunity. And it's just how you approach that. You take time, um, start focus on things that interest you, and eventually you start seeing how they could apply, how the ideas you learn, how the skills you develop could apply to other things, right? Just me, like I mentioned, me experimenting with the vibe coding. um, Number one, I'm getting experience with AI.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting experience with more experience with building web pages and websites and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which I've done before. um, Getting some experience. There's probably other things involved with that, as far as the research that I have to do, regarding, the record stores and, you know, everything involved with putting that whole thing together, right? Um, and and what I'm seeing is there could be application to any other job that I wind up getting, or even other projects, you know.
Yeah. And I think that to me is the thing that I'm so shocked that we have undervalued in our society, but also how like how deep that was for me. Like really not valuing it unless it's profitable. Really not valuing
Yeah.
it unless it's valued by others. And the crazy thing is, oftentimes that's so internalized that we'll ignore actual feedback from real life people in our lives that say, "Oh, that's amazing. Oh, look at what you did. That's incredible." And yeah, sometimes I think people are like excited when they see you do a project. I used to do party planning, and sometimes I would do like balloon arches and stuff like that. And people would see and be like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. You should definitely do that." Or maybe I would be like, talking to them about a topic that I just recently like went in a rabbit hole about. And they were like, "Oh wow, you explained that really well. You should be a teacher," right? And it's all these pressures of like, "Oh wow, you have this interest," or "Wow, you have this skill, you have this talent. You should monetize it." That's always the suggestion. And that suggestion, while really well meaning, I mean, I'm sure we've all done it to other people, but it really sends a message that if you're not monetizing this, it is not worth your time.
Right, right. But at the same time, right? Sometimes people will value taking classes. People will value going to school, even like master class or
Mm.
conferences, all sorts of stuff like that. But sometimes self learning, and it's really the experimentation and trying different things that lead to the self learning. One other thing that I dove into, this was around 2020-ish, around the time of the pandemic, as tied into the podcast that I was a part of, Apartment 5B podcast. We were working with some artists, and I started diving into like promoting.
Um,
It was just something like we decided that it was a good opportunity to start promoting artists that we knew who had projects coming out, and especially since we had extra time, everyone was either home, out of work, or working from home. You know, Once other people that I was involved with lost interest, I kept going for a while, and that kind of turned into my own thing. That's where my little freestyles moniker came in. I started doing some interviews. I started doing some videos and stuff like that. I wound up at some point. I wound up putting that to the side a little bit, partially because I started seeing, well, I'm not really monetizing it, and I started questioning the time that I was investing in that versus investing my time into something else.
mhm.
Uh, but I think the time that I did invest in it was very, very fruitful.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm learning generally. Like every opportunity to learn something new will be fruitful. If for no other reason than you just practiced a skill, which is to stretch your mind. You just
Right.
practiced being a beginner. You just practiced like learning something new, diving into a topic. You practiced research, like whatever that thing is. Like it's not always the topic itself, it's not always the project itself, but it's the journey and the process that you take when you're doing it. And that's something you should always be practiced in because life is going to throw you curveballs. and you never know what skill is going to come in handy. And most importantly, what we know when we do have those curveballs thrown at us is that the skill that's always going to come in handy is adaptability, is resilience. And
Yeah.
so that's what that teaches you. And on the topic of that video, and then I'll digress, that M-shaped future being, hey, go ahead and build multiple pillars, right? You build multiple pillars and then you use them to bridge together, but you have to do it one at a time. And I think, you know, as with everything in life, it's always easier said than done, and your circumstances are always going to play a part. When you're in survival mode, when you don't got money to eat and you don't know where your next meal is coming from, where you're in a bad situation, saying, "Oh yeah, don't ignore your passions. Go ahead and pursue them, and they don't have to be profitable." That's something to say when a person's time is the only resource they have. And so
Yeah.
I think I always remind myself that when I'm learning these lessons today, I have a tendency of like looking back at myself and like kind of wanting to kick myself when I was down, like, why you didn't do better? And it's like, girl, she did the best she could with what she had, with what she knew. And we're
Yeah.
here today and she got us here. So let's just let's give her a break, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely facts. I mean, I think when you're in a situation, either, you know, being unemployed, having a situation, I know you're, on PT, out of work a little bit, while you recover and you have the extra time, can lean into your interests, right? Kind of let that guide you. Like if you try to start doing something and it becomes a chore, like really, really a chore, like, damn, I told myself I want to do this, but anytime I get started, I'm get distracted, or it just feels like I don't want to do it. Like, as someone with ADHD, the things that we really are interested in, want to do, we can hyper focus.
Oh yeah.
Anything else that starts feeling like a chore, it's like pulling teeth. So that's really going to guide you. Like, you really understand, okay, maybe this is what I should be focusing on, because it's a path of least resistance. Is obviously something that I'm interested in, and at the very least, it could build another pillar that could help me on down the road, when I'm seeking something else.
Yeah, it's true, but I don't know how you feel about it. It's hard sometimes to let things go,
Yeah.
especially like projects, like especially things where like that idea hit you and it was everything. You got so obsessed with that, like you were so excited. You really pictured it. You fantasized about it. You were so motivated. You lost sleep over it, and you were happy to do so. Like you get into these hyper focused states and you get so excited, and then when you lose motivation, it feels like some kind of betrayal. And I think the reframe that I'm trying to do right now is to look at those past projects, and instead of looking at them as a graveyard of my projects past, I want to look at them like a museum. I want to look at them like, an archive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I had to let that project go, and that's okay. And maybe it's okay. My body told me it was time to let it go. And there, we can always revisit things, but yeah, not feeling like I wasted my time, and really remembering that that was time well spent. And I'd rather spend my time excited about something than just bored and depressed and doing nothing,
No,
right?
facts. And the thing is like, you could always revisit any of those things. Like, once the desire comes, like sometimes it could be a situation where, you hit a block in the road, you know, either a creative block, or, motivational block, whatever it is, you know, you've poured what you can pour into it, you reach a block. Then at some point, as you build in those pillars, you might develop another skill that now you're like, oh wait, I could go back to this. I just
Yeah,
unlocked something. I just figured something out.
right.
Now let me
That's
push
the
this
point.
to the next level.
That is such a good point. And that's why it's, to your point, it is important to let go when it's time to let go, because you might stumble upon the thing that will circle you back around and actually build something new and better and more exciting. So good point.
Yeah. We're both from New York, right? Different generations. Obviously, you're still in New York. I'm not. I'm in sunny California, Los
I'm
Angeles.
still in New York, but nobody is going to allow me to call myself a New Yorker because everybody hates Staten Island. And I just want to speak up for a moment and say Staten Island is New York too, okay?
Oh, it is.
We are a bridge away from Brooklyn. I'm there all the time. I take the ferry to Manhattan all the time, okay? And half of us came from Brooklyn anyway, okay?
Yo, let me
Stay in the North.
Word. Let me tell you something. Like everybody wants to discount Staten Island until someone brings up Wu-Tang Clan. It's like,
Right.
yeah, like they're like one of the greatest New York, rap groups ever. Yeah, they're from New York. Staten Island is part of New York. You know what I'm saying? Like the respect, the respect of Staten Island, and you know
Put
what
some
I'm saying.
respect on our name.
The video that I shared was surviving New York City, 1980. I think Manhattan. Focus on Manhattan, right? So I'm gonna start with a question, which is, watching that video. There's a lot of nostalgia and romanticism about New York in the 80s. If you look back at movies and media and stuff like that. But watching that, like, do you feel like that is warranted? Do you think that there's things that are being ignored as far as like the negative aspects of it?
I do. I think though it's normal. I think it's very normal to romanticize the past. Um, we all know that part of the reason we have the, political climate we have today is this fantasy that we can go back to the past where things were perceived as better than what they are, because we still feel the pain and the friction of dealing with today's problems. But when we look
Right.
back, I feel like it's really easy to forget what those problems were because you only really want to remember the good. And I mean, when you think about New York in the 80s, for everything that it was like, for everything that was bad, there was something that came of it that couldn't have come out of anywhere else. Like it was
Absolutely.
just so unique. It was so innovative. It really, the culture burst in New York City changed the nation. Like
Change
quite
everything. Yeah.
literally changed the nation. So I think it's very easy to want to remember the good times. But I mean, listen,
So I'll kind of wrap that right. You don't get that cultural impact without getting the negative, right?
yeah,
Um, and speaking from a hip hop head, as a hip hop head, you know, some of the greatest um, creative points in hip hop history has come from points where it wasn't the best. Like it could be poverty, could be crime, and not just the crime, but how the city responded to that crime. Right. Um,
yeah.
there was a lot of profiling. There was a lot of unjust ways that black and brown folks were being targeted in the city, right? Especially when you look at other things like white collar crimes that was going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at the 80s were an area where there was a lot of crime with related to drugs, but if you know the folks that were being prosecuted, for selling crack, right? Small time crack dealers, when, cocaine use in some of the major clubs that were prevalent in the 80s, they were getting away with it. It was pretty much out in the open, right? So it wasn't really equal, and then if you think of the poverty, right? Not excusing anything that was done, right? If you look at the poverty, if people are in survival mode and they see a way, even if it's not legal means, but they see a way to sell drugs, to make something, anything, to support their families. You could question the methods, but when you have desperation, people are just going to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, whatever it takes to get through the day. And on that note, I wanted to paint a picture. This was a quote from the video that you sent me. It said,
Yep.
there was, so if you imagine, there's like 3 tiers, right? There's the sky rises, there's the streets, and then there's on the ground. And I painted this picture of terrified commuters underground, violent streets at ground level, and cocaine fueled excess in the towers above. And I think that really painted a picture, and I wanted to mention it because it really describes, like, there was really no escaping just how, like, really it was dangerous, and like there wasn't anywhere where you could avoid the corruption. Like, it was everywhere. And so you talk about that desperation, and I think, it's interesting because we talked earlier about how creativity can come from having some peace and having a break, but creativity very much also comes from pressure. When you have no way to escape, you can escape through your art, you can escape through your music. And I think that's why fashion booms. I think that's why nightlife booms. I think that's why music booms, because you needed that escape and there was nowhere else to get it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good transition. Like, talk about the cultural impact. It was really unmatched, right? Because when you talk about hip hop, right? Hip hop really started in the 70s, but the golden era, a lot of fans, people that consider themselves, hip hop experts, they'll say, really like 88 was like really the first peak, creative peak, and the 80s really, it kind of was a steady rise to 88, right? So you had groups like, Run DMC, the Beastie Boys that you don't get unless you get that mesh of cultures between the punk rockers and the hip hop movement that you could really only get in New York.
Right.
You could only, because that was the cultural mix, and the Latinos and African Americans and everyone, right? So a group like the Beastie Boys, which was pivotal in those early stages, a group like Public Enemy, which their real voice was talk about all the political stuff, right? Ronald Reagan was president, like the crack epidemic and police corruption and all that stuff, right? So you getting all of that, the art, the Basquiat's, the Andy Warhols, the any of the street artists, the graffitis, all that stuff.
I think like the fashion was also another big thing, and that was like really interesting to me, like how East Village became like this like fashion icon, and how like the graffiti art and then the fashion like really had this like kindred spirit, and it was just it was beautiful. It really was.
Absolutely.
For all that people try to make it and politicize it and call it vandalism, it was art.
Absolutely. And if you look back now a lot of those graffiti artists, they wind up getting paid jobs to do murals, for businesses, for events and different stuff like that. There was a movement where, some of those graffiti artists, street artists, wound up making art, that wound up in art galleries. Um, there was a little bit of a conflict between, the street artists and graffiti artists who wanted to stay true to the culture of bombing trains and doing things, the old school way, and those who kind of saw the writing on the wall, pun intended, right? And decided, hey, this is the pivot of, getting our work in art galleries and trying to go legit with it, right? But the fact that people saw that as a viable source that could wind up being in art galleries, right? You had movies made about it, like Wild Style, which talked about the graffiti art as well as the dancing and
Oh,
hip
yeah.
hop and stuff like that. So the art part, like you talk about the fashion, you know, um, someone like a Dapper Dan who really came into his prominence because the major fashion brands wasn't catering to black and brown folks. So he would take like prints from these major fashion brands and start making, clothing items, and a lot of the artists back then, like you look at Salt and Pepper, Eric B and Rakim, there's other artists out there that I'm forgetting that they were wearing it during their shows on their album cover. They were Dapper Dan stuff. I think he wound up, you know, making more money and being recognized and stuff like that. But that wound up being a nod to the culture,
Yeah.
because of the closed doors. People go and open new doors.
Absolutely. I think like my experience, like I wasn't there in the 80's, right? uh,
Yeah,
so, and even in the 90's, because I was born in 1990, even then I was a kid. But I did have experiences going to the city. Um, we lived in Brooklyn, but we lived in Borough Park for the majority of like what I remember being a kid. And then we
yeah,
shortly after moved to Staten Island. There was a brief period where I was living in the Farragut projects in Brooklyn.
yeah.
And I lived in Rockaway for some time when I was living in with our sister Marilyn. But I have been in and out of the city because dad was working there. And so my experiences were really kind of back and forth. But as an adult, I'll say that I've had experiences where I've like met people who were visiting from other countries, from other cities. You go out for a night on the town and you meet other people, you get to know them, and you make best friends for a night, and, and then you never talk to them again. But
Right.
we have met these girls. I think they were from Germany, and they came, and you could tell like they were very on guard. Like one of them was like trying so hard to be safe. I guess she had heard like all the worst possible stories, but her other friend was just like so open, so happy to be there. She was like trying to get a smoke off some guy, and she was just
Hmm.
walking up to random people, and her friend was like, "What are you doing? Get over here!" And I felt
Right.
like I was watching like both perspectives on New York, which is like one, which is like it's this dangerous city that you have to be very careful, and the other one was just like you can meet all these types of people and do all these new things, and it's so family oriented. And I think that was like something that was brought up in this video that I thought was really interesting. It's just like how it went from that transition of just being this like dangerous city that, I mean, pressure makes a diamond, right? It made something beautiful, like we talked about, but this really like scary, dangerous, like unkempt city, and how it became like this destination of a lifetime. And I thought that
Absolutely. Yeah.
you probably had more experience with maybe that transition.
Yeah. And, I was born in 1980. So, I was also a kid throughout the 80s, but just, our dad worked at the Port Authority bus terminal, which is adjacent to 42nd Street.
Mhm.
Now, anyone who had been to 42nd Street, depending when you went, either the 42nd Street in the 80s was basically all smut peep shows, pornography theaters. Like it was pretty slummy and bad, right? Like I had no like even just driving by, like, yeah, you're not seeing, but you're witnessing, you're seeing the signs, you're seeing people out there, even, depending what time you go, you're seeing the women, walking the streets as well.
Mm.
Um, and eventually that evolved and became like Disney shows and family entertainment,
All right, with the
and that
cat.
sort of thing. And it was like that's crazy, right? So like I said, depending on when someone might have visited New York or lived in New York, they may have experienced one or the other. I experienced both, but it was pretty crazy to kind of see that, just going into Manhattan, and dad working at the center of it, the Port Authority bus terminal. um
Hmm.
it was pretty wild, man.
He's told me he's
But and
had some experiences that he's like he don't even want to talk about it just because working in the city and working at the Port Authority and just like navigating that world where he like literally won't tell me what he's seen, but he's like, oh, I seen some fights and I see some other stuff, but there's stuff I won't even tell you. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
yeah, I mean, you could guess, you could really, especially in that area. You know there was, there was crime, like I said, prostitution. I'm sure a lot of police activity, when you're dealing with a bus terminal, right? You got people coming in and out, all types of folks, you know. So you're seeing it all. You're seeing it all, and when you think of now, on top of that, um, how many people were on drugs in the 80s?
Mm.
You know, whether crackheads, and I hate to use that term. It sounds derogatory, but let's keep it a buck. Crackheads and the coke addicts, right?
Oh
Either way, you got people who are, on some type of substance, that could cause them to act a certain way that now you got to deal with, you
yeah.
know, and they think they're Superman. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
well,
So,
yeah. Well, especially if you're a coke, because it was cokeheads were for the rich. So, if
yeah,
if you got money, you could get away with shit. That's the
word,
reality. So you are invincible. Like basically, who was really policing
word,
that?
word. But I will say, and as much as we want to talk about, what New York is now with the gentrification, and how it's lost a lot of the culture. I will say, like, it did need to change. Like, from the 80s, it definitely needed to change, because just the safety, and to be known as, one of the greatest cities in the world, if not claiming to be the best city in the world, the greatest city in the world, and people come there and have that experience, it is crazy, you know.
It is. I think one of the hard things when it comes to a situation like what you're talking, right? New York is a dangerous place, like objectively, and it needs to change. Like there are families here, there are people here. Like this is a city that could be making a lot of money. Like it should not be in squalor, and so of course that needs to change. But I think it's really hard to wrestle that sometimes because you have to ask the question, well, why is it in this position in the first place?
Yeah,
And like really what were the powers that be that led to that being the situation? And when it comes to then, okay, this solution, this magical, oh, we're going to change it, we're going to fix it. what's really happening there? Because is it really that you're fixing it for the people there, or are you pushing people out and you're using this excuse of, you know, the story that you're going to tell about the people who live in the city, rather than telling the story that you failed the people, and now you're going to pretend to solve the problem by pushing them out. And so I think that's what makes it hard, because you see, like, well, yeah, like, we're grateful that what's going on isn't going on anymore, but you know where that came from, and you know what it did, and those people that were pushed out, that cycle is just going to continue somewhere else. And so
For sure. And you know, like they you know, the 70s, and I know the video is about the 80s, right? But you know, sometimes you got to go back, like New York in the 70s, especially the Bronx, and that could be a whole other discussion. What happened with the Bronx? Like, if you look at what the South Bronx was, you know, back in the 70s, you know, that really led to the creation of hip hop. Like, it was crazy. It was just like this. It looked like an abandoned war zone, right? But even then, right, and you had street gangs, you had all this stuff, poverty, but really it was like when they introduced crack to the neighborhoods, and let's keep it 100, you know, it wasn't the government. Like, people didn't get it just out of thin air. They didn't make it. They didn't, you know, like people were,
right.
you know, people weren't in the hood just with their school chemistry sets talking about, like, oh, look what I invented. No,
right.
no.
Have I got something for you?
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like it was pumped in there. Like, you know, was the government involved? Like do your research. Like, you know, I don't want to
Listen,
be targeted.
the easiest way to do what you want to do in the first place is to come up with a solution to a problem that you can create. And that's the reality. Like, that's really what's happening. That's really what happened. That's really what continues to happen. But right now, we're seeing a transition of power because we have a new mayor over here. So we'll see. There's been some big promises that were made by the new mayor, and I wish them the best of luck because I live here, and I want to see those changes for the better too. Like, and I think that might be another conversation for another day. But you know, no matter what this city is going through, no matter what New York is going through, New York is always going to be a hub for creativity, for collaboration. And so we're just going to keep doing our thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, I really hope, you know, obviously, you know, have you and Marilyn living in New York, and other family, although a lot of our family moved out to go to Florida. But, you know, it'll be a great thing if New York becomes affordable again. And, you know, it'll be a great thing if, you know, the city, you know, turns a page just to kind of be for all folks, not just, you know, benefiting the wealthy and those who have the most money, but for, you know, the middle class, the, you know,
and not
anyone
super wealthy.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there is
right.
People really need to learn the difference between $1 million and $1 billion. Okay, people really need to learn the difference. Gosh.
Big facts.
Yeah.
Big facts. But
you know,
once again, man.
I just noticed that you had the Mets jersey in the background while we're talking about New York. I just caught that. You see, you're in Cali, but it's never gonna leave you.
Never gonna leave. I got that. I got the Biggie shirt. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it's the New York vibe. And last time the Mets won the World Series was the 80s, 1986 particular. Okay. So it all ties in. But yo, I love the topics. I love the discussion once again. You know, always great to do this.
Every time.
So do you have any final words for our viewers?
Yeah, I just I want to remind everybody of a moment in the last Fantastic Four movie when everybody had to work together. No spoilers, no crazy spoilers. But there comes a point in the movie where everybody in the world on planet Earth has to work together in order to create something that'll help them with the battle that they're presented with. And in an effort to do that, everybody needs to have a curfew on the amount of power that they're using. So you shut the grid off and they could use all the power that they needed to create what they needed to create. And I think that's just like a perfect metaphor for the creative process. Sometimes you just got to shut the power down. You got to take a nap. You got to relax. You got to stop doing something for 5 minutes. And I know, especially like when you're neurodivergent, when you have these, these pressing responsibilities and you feel like there's no time in the world, it can feel like every time spent doing nothing is a time wasted. But it's so valuable to conserve your energy, because when you can really conserve your energy, I feel like you can pull in. Like in that movie, they were able to do some amazing things when they were able to just shut things down in the night, take some time, shut it off, turn off your mind, and you'll be surprised what you can receive.
Absolutely. And on that note, peace.
All right, peace, brother. Love you. Talk to you later.
Love you too, sis.